So Young, Yoo-Seung-jun, he won, right? Steve Yu.
Yeah, the appeal for Steve or Seung-jun.
Yeah, Steve Yu.
He actually won that, and the decision came out, I believe, at 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock?
Yeah,
he was
it was on Thursday. Thursday? Was it Thursday? Oh, no, it was Wednesday night. Night here in Pacific time.
Did you talk with him afterwards?
Yes, he did talk. What are you talking about? He came by and visited us.
I was just pretending that he didn't, but
yeah, I think he's very happy about it. I think it's long overdue. Right? I think there's no real law or anything that prohibits him as long as they have. So
it was kind of like Inmin Japan, right? Like court of public opinion. He was guilty. I
think it was also a move by the government too. The government did stop him from coming in and having a chance to speak. That's a fact, But I also think that there's a lot of different things that go on in Korea.
Yeah.
And fact of the matter is that the military in general is just a very, very sensitive subject. When I was in Korea, all in my 20s, from my 20s until 35, every time I met a new person, I met a lot of people. I met like new people every day. This question would always be asked. Did you go to the army?
Yeah.
Oh, you're an American citizen. So I guess you didn't go to the army, right? Mm-hmm. That's how big it is. And right now, Korea, is the population is shrinking daily, right? Mm-hmm. And less people are having babies. So how are they going to man everyone in the front lines or whatnot,
Because once you go to 군대, like I did, and then it's like, so who's the one who didn't go? It's automatically ingrained in our brain.
Exactly.
The culture is like that.
Exactly.
Right?
It's like, and then there was all these scandals of politicians and their kids not going. So obviously it's a very sensitive subject, right? I mean, hey, but I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
With the nation the population shrinking every day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, do you think it's time for women to go to serve?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Is that never going to happen? Not like Israel or anything?
Well, I think females... I'm
not saying they should, but, I'm just saying some people question that.
So what feminists, should I say feminists, in Korea, what they're saying is females, when they marry, they have to carry a baby for like 9 months. So that is equivalent to the 2 years and 2 months. Now it's not even 2 years of
But what if you decide you don't have babies?
Military.
I mean, you don't have a baby.
Serve. Yeah.
I don't get it.
I don't know, but you want them to serve?
No.
Okay. Well, we have Radio Korea CEO Michael Kim back. How are you doing, sir?
What are your thoughts on that?
Thanks.
Well, what's your thought about Steven Yeun? Because it's a big news today.
Yeah, good for him. I just met him. He's a nice guy. Hope to see him again, and hopefully he comes on the program.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a certain perception about Korean military service?
You went to a military camp,
you did,
right?
actually.
Yeah,
right. Not 2 years and 2 months, but you had a 1 month training there, right?
대한민국 해병대.
How was that experience for you?
Well, this was summer of 95.
I would think not pleasant.
Not pleasant.
No, because I didn't really understand Korean, barely.
Oh, no.
And they would tell me to do things and I didn't understand. So I understood the curse words. So they would cuss at me and they would hit me. And I remember almost passing out from exhaustion.
Really?
I remember sleeping at night. The other people would mess with me while I was asleep.
Because you didn't speak Korean?
Or maybe they just thought I was an easy target. But a lot of the people there didn't speak Korean. They were the children of Marines whose fathers had sent them to do that summer program in
Korea. From the States, right?
Yeah. So we were all in Pohang. And we did all the, we did rappel, down a mountain.
That's fun.
IBS inflatable boat, small. We did that. We were shooting the Daewoo K2 rifles.
Oh, you got to shoot guns too.
That was the one thing I was good at, shooting.
Oh, you were good at shooting?
Just like in a Full Metal Jacket, Golden Pyle's character. That was the one thing.
You were that character, Michael?
Okay.
I felt that way later on. I was like...
So they would pick on kids who can't speak Korean pretty much, right?
Again, a lot of them didn't. It wasn't necessarily that. I think I was just an easy target.
Okay.
I remember back in the 90s when I first went to Korea, if you were with English speaking friends and you were speaking English, someone would always say something to you, just out of the blue, some 아저씨, right? 한국 사람이면 한국말 해야지,
Yeah, that was
and then they would actually start crap with you. They would actually try to punk you.
I heard the same thing in a Korean restaurant in K-Town, actually.
Oh, really?
15, 16 years ago. Because that was a time when you don't see
한인타운이면 한국말 해야지.
그러니까 어디서 so people were like, just speaking in English like young kids, and then one 아저씨 was saying out of the blue, 누가 여기서 계속 아까부터 영어하는 거야?
See, that's
like it's America.
Yeah, but I get that, but that's like 건데 if you're pointing it out, because a lot of these kids, they might not be able to speak English or Korean.
But the funny thing is Koreatown, America, right? And then 아저씨 was saying that.
That's ridiculous. That's like,
Yeah, so it was 1 month for you, huh?
I think it was about a month. We spent some time at the Marine Corps, whatever the base, and then we spent some time with the Navy.
The Navy.
And then we were on a ship. I remember I had a camera and I started taking pictures, and somebody came to me like, "Stop taking pictures."
You can't take pictures either?
Well, this was in 95. I don't know. It was 7 years after democratization. I don't know.
But even in America, being a draft dodger, being known as a draft dodger, so to speak, it's not a good name, right? Here in the States too, right? I think that's why Elvis Presley decided to go to military. He was drafted.
Peer pressure.
Muhammad Ali didn't go.
Muhammad Ali didn't, yeah.
Yeah, but Muhammad Ali was very fierce and proud. Like, he's like, I'm not going to go over there to, no Vietnamese ever called me the N-word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He goes, if I'm going to fight someone, I'm going to fight you here at home, because you're my oppressor when I want freedom. Yeah.
His enemy was white America. He pretty much said that, right? Look at all the bad stuff. The White House, white that.
Yeah, right.
But everything white is bad, though. Salt, sugar, flour is not good for you.
Are you saying white people are bad?
I don't know. I mean, but it's true. When you see white things, it's not cocaine.
Okay.
I have a point. Name one thing white that's good.
Salt.
Salt is bad for you.
Don't we need it?
Like, I mean, you do up to a certain point. I think from a religious perspective, I think salt is viewed good, but from a health perspective, it's not good for you.
So are we doing a white bashing program?
Well, no, I'm just, I mean, white. Well, name something that's white that's good.
Well, I think some white people are good.
Except like a white Ferrari or something. That's cool.
I don't know. Yeah, when you put it that way, it's hard to come up all of a sudden,
No, I'm just saying.
Yeah. So, Michael...
Potatoes are bad for you, too. Well, they're not bad for you, but
potato,
it's not as good for you.
Is it white?
Yeah.
Is potato white?
It's kind of yellowish white.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's thousands of different varieties of potatoes.
Now everyone's thinking...
I'm trying to think about something good about it, but I can't come up with it out of the blue.
About potatoes?
No, about something white.
About something white that's good.
I don't know, like white bread? I don't know.
That's bad
white
for
bread
you.
is bad
Wheat
for
bread
health,
is better.
actually.
White cake? I don't know.
Probably even worse for you is cake.
White sneakers?
White sneakers.
All right, white sneakers are good.
Yeah, milk? Arguably.
Right. Some people will argue that, saying that we're not actually supposed to drink cow's milk.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're lactose intolerant?
I'm lactose
See?
intolerant.
He's not supposed to.
But I don't know. I drink it every once in a while.
Okay. Let's get on to the subject.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So, Michael, we want to talk about China. China has been hitting the news today. I don't know whether you checked it or not, but on Business Insider, it reported that Mexico replaced China as America's top trade buddy. And it shows how the global economy is rapidly transforming. This is kind of surprising. I always thought that China is locked in for number one trade country with America, but Mexico to surpass China and now reach $263 billion. I think this kind of shows that the deterioration of relationship between United States and China, right?
It has deteriorated quite a bit, don't you think?
I mean, it's surprising to me. To be honest
sure. There's a trade war also.
Yeah.
Also, I think, it has deteriorated quite a bit, especially since I think Obama did his pivot to Asia.
Yes.
And then Trump started the trade war, and then COVID happened, and then that was, I guess, still being blamed on China, I guess.
What do you think about those reports, by the way? Sorry, just throw that up there.
What
those reports saying that it's they have, well, New York Post and a few other conservative media are reporting that it was the first three were from the Wuhan lab.
Patient zero was from the Wuhan lab.
Yeah.
What's that patient's name?
Well, they say there's an American involved. I'm not sure exactly what the name is, but they said there's 2 Chinese and 1 American.
I mean, I don't know how you can. I mean, so they fully identified who patient zero is? Like, I don't think so. I don't know how you can determine who's the first one. And also, I remember reports, I think in 2021, they found sewage samples in like Italy that contained COVID, which was from like March 2019. And then if you remember, there was in was it COVID-19? Yeah, 2019, before the thing hit in Wuhan. Do you remember there was like these vaping illnesses and deaths happening in America?
The bubble lung syndrome or something.
Yeah,
like popcorn lung.
Yeah, they were saying people were dying.
Yeah, I heard that.
And then there were these deaths happening in these nursery homes, saying like some kind of fever. And then that just kind of disappeared. And then there were also theories about that it was developed at Fort Detrick, at a military base or something here in the U.S. I'm not saying it's that. But I'm saying, why are we only looking at China? We should look at all the information and explore everything. It seems like what we always seem to just pursue is the China route. We don't want to look at what we did here potentially. And also, another interesting thing I heard or found out was that I think, was it 2 months or a month prior to the first, things happening in Wuhan, there was a World Military Games like festival in Wuhan, and the U.S. military was also in Wuhan at that time. So I'm not saying it wasn't China where the first case was. I'm not saying it's the U.S., but I'm saying there's a lot of questions, and we're not examining all the things that we can with all the information that's out there. Everything is just like, it's got to be China. It's got to be China. And I don't think that's fair.
Do you think the world is ganging up on China ever since COVID-19?
Well, if you consider the world to be the U.S. and Europe and Australia, then yeah, but I don't think most of the world agrees. I think we're so used to just hearing our view here, and Europe basically echoes our view here. Then you would think that, yeah, China's horrible, uncultured, as I heard someone say recently, and that they're dirty and everything they're doing is evil. They're trying to take over the world. All these horrible things you hear about China. I think it's unfair. And I know especially a lot of our viewers, reading the comments, especially, I know they're very, I think they're falling for a bunch of lies and propaganda.
So the news media or mainstream media is trying to put other propaganda, and according to that propaganda, may churn or support and basically prints what the establishment would want. Is that kind of the...
I don't know about establishment. Soros, whoever you want to call it.
No, just the establishment in general, the general government.
Well, it's about competition. So America's number one, right?
Yeah.
And China, let's say 70 years ago, was backwards and poor.
Sorry, but is America number one right now?
No, I think,
by most measures, I think still number one.
I think influence-wise, America has the biggest.
That's definite.
But I just came back from Korea, and I already
Korea's number one.
Talked with you about it, but I think the living standard-wise, it made me question: is America number one? But
you didn't believe it before you went to Korea.
But I think it's very subject.
Yeah, but that's the thing. What does it mean to be number one?
I know, it's different.
As an individual citizen,
that is also very.
You can have the greatest GDP in the world and still have the biggest population of homeless, the biggest population of prisoners, and you're still number one.
Exactly.
But what does that mean for regular people?
It's hard to even set the standard. Which standard do you have to hit to be number one in the world?
So I'm talking about
money.
Economy size.
When you say it, you're pretty much saying
money.
GDP
The way that other people say, GDP, whatever.
Right? Okay. Yeah.
Money.
Yeah, money.
It's all about money now.
According to, but anyway, so I think there's a lot of misconceptions about China. I think it's very dangerous because we see this all the time before there's like military conflicts. You'll see there's like a demonization of the enemy, whether it's Iraq or Syria and Assad or Afghanistan and the Taliban.
Public opinion, right?
Right, because you cannot go to war unless the public supports the war. Mm-hmm. And if you want the public to support a war, you have to get them emotional.
Do you think America and like China would ever like go into a war? That's pretty scary. That's pretty freaky.
Because of the Taiwan issue, are you talking about?
I don't think
in any way.
I don't think it'll ever get to that point. I don't think
so
but
either.
We're certainly.
I don't know.
We're getting closer to it, but I don't think it'll actually ever cross that line. And again, Taiwan and these things are not even about. It's not about freedom or whatever that we say, but we always need to demonize the enemy before we, go attack them. So we need China as an enemy, but it's really about competition and challenging our dominance here as, the global superpower. Something, it's not a position that an empire would want to give up easily. Like if you're number one, you don't want to be number two. But, so we hear all this stuff about China. We hear about, for example, what's the thing about China always, free Taiwan, free Hong Kong, free Tibet, free the Muslims in Xinjiang, the Uyghur population. I
think we talked a little bit about that last week.
Yeah, there was that guest last week.
He wasn't as well, I guess, he didn't explain.
I think he's more knowledgeable, but I think he maybe had a harder time speaking.
I want to bring him back. We want to bring him back.
Yeah,
I think towards the end he started warming up a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think I think we all kind of agree that we have almost, complete distrust of the mainstream media, but it was the Western media that pretty much, said that COVID-19 is dangerous. It came from China.
Sure.
So you were saying that we have been skeptical about all these media reports. They were wrong about Iraq and so many things, right? So why are we just blindly trusting them regarding the COVID-19?
That's true. Weapons of mass destruction,
news, right?
this and that. There was a lot of accusations thrown towards that.
Right.
So you were saying that we have been skeptical for so many things, but why not regarding this one too? Right?
I mean, okay, yeah, it's anytime. Okay, if you understand or know a bit of say CIA history. What was the operation? I think it was
Operation Mockingbird.
Mockingbird, right. The CIA would have many assets throughout the media, including editors-in-chief and reporters, journalists, whatever. And there's a former CIA agent who I saw an interview with him, and he talked about how what they would do is to get an asset is, sometimes you leak accurate information to them and they find out it's accurate. They know they can trust you. And then later you can give them inside scoop information on, it could be false, but you say it and they already trust you. So they'll go with that story. Or even if they know it's not true, they want to be a good American, good patriot. They're helping their country. So the CIA has all these, people in media and whatnot, doing, the work that they want them to do.
They become their puppets in a way.
Well,
right?
So the mainstream media, big corporate media, it's part of the whole overall system, the establishment, the government, intelligence agencies, the military, big business, media. It's all part of the same machine.
And it's a mouthpiece. The mainstream media is a mouthpiece.
Right. So, things about for example, we say free Taiwan, right? Taiwan should be free and independent and all this. Sure, why not? From the view of Americans, it's who the hell is China to try and take over this island? Who do they think they are? Taiwanese people should determine, their future and all that. And that sounds great. That sounds wonderful. But what we don't hear about is the other, the other information that we don't get.
Other side of the story.
Yeah. So there was a civil war in China. And you had, I think it was the communists led by Mao Zedong against, I guess, the nationalists, whatever, led by Chiang Kai-shek.
They're the Falun Gong or something, right?
No.
That's
later on. Yeah.
Okay.
So the communists basically won and took over the mainland. And then the losing side, I guess you could say, they went to Taiwan, the island of Taiwan. Now, if you know China's official name, it's the People's Republic of China. What is Taiwan's official name? Do you guys know?
Taiwan.
It's ROC. What does that stand for?
Republic of China.
Republic of China. So what is the U.S. One China policy? The U.S. One China policy, our official policy is that we only recognize the PRC, the Communist China, as the legitimate government of China. Officially.
Official stance.
Despite what all the leaders say, Taiwan should be free, but officially, that's our policy. Yeah. And
we're following that, actually. Yeah.
Right. And Taiwan is not in the UN because they recognize the People's Republic of China. Most countries in the world recognize the PRC as the legitimate China. So there's that issue. So then, okay, Taiwan, that was back then. The war was a long time ago. I feel like China could have gone into Taiwan anytime and just taken over. It would have been so easy. But what I've heard from Chinese people is, hey, we don't want to kill our fellow Chinese. We can take a long-term approach and hope that eventually there will be a peaceful unification.
That makes sense.
Now there are people in Taiwan that do want independence. And that's fine and understandable. But as we know here, or any place in history, if you're part of a country and you want to declare independence, that's not easy to accomplish. So the U.S. was founded, we were a British colony, right? Mm-hmm. And then the founding fathers, George Washington and those guys, they wanted independence and they got it. But it took war, a lot of bloodshed. Mm-hmm. So I'm saying Taiwan, I personally, I don't think it's an issue for us. It doesn't involve us. It's not our thing. What I would like to ask is, how would we as Americans feel, for example, if Chinese politicians, high-ranking officials of the Communist Party of China went to Hawaii or Alaska or Puerto Rico and met with independence activists there and say, hey, you guys should be independent from the United States. We're going to give you weapons. We're going to, let us put a military base in Hawaii or in Puerto Rico, and we'll protect you. We'll take care of you. Would Americans like that?
Yeah, but the fact is, Puerto Rico is not like that, right? And Taiwanese people, they want, I wouldn't say every single one of them, but I would say probably majority of them wants independence from China, right?
I don't know about majority. I mean, I think figures have varied throughout the years. But again, let's say all the people of Hawaii wanted independence. Would they get it?
You're saying hypothetically, right?
And there are independence activists there. But here's the thing. There are independence activists in Hawaii, like native Hawaiians, like indigenous to the land, who are saying they are not American, that America banned their language, don't allow them to use their language in the schools, and that they were being genocided. But we never hear those voices. Why? But we hear all about Taiwan.
Yeah.
We don't hear about Hawaii. And there are people in Puerto Rico who want independence. There are people who want independence in California even.
I know.
But everything's about Taiwan. So I'm saying Taiwan can be independent, sure. Whatever the people want, I feel, they can get. But I'm saying it's not our business here in the United States. It's not for us to determine what Taiwan should or shouldn't get.
Ideologically, I think you're right. But realistically, we're not living in that world. You know that this globalist agenda is already intact. And I think United States feel like they're the leader of the world.
So America has a globalist agenda.
I think so. The deep state, so to speak. I think they definitely have a globalist agenda.
Well, that's why they're number one. That's why they're number one.
America has bases all over the world and satellites looking over everything.
That's why they want to put Ukraine in NATO. I think Biden administration wants to put it. I think that's going to create more chaos, to be honest with you, even regarding the Ukraine situation. So I understand your point of view. I do, but we're living in that world. What can we do about it? We complain a lot about even the Ukraine war. I think it's wrong. I think the United States shouldn't have been that involved.
So it's either you just sit there and just let things happen, or at least you can talk about it.
I think that emboldened Taiwanese, actually, the Ukraine situation. I think United States is that involved, so they're going to help us that much. I think that's what's going on in Taiwan.
Well, I don't know if Taiwanese people want to see their see that island turn into another Ukraine with bombs dropping everywhere. But Taiwan is just one of those issues. We have the other issues they talk about, like Hong Kong. Hong Kong became a British colony like 1840s or something, because at the time, the British at one point had the biggest empire on earth. They said the sun never
colonial. The colonizers. They're like the ultimate.
Yeah, they're the ultimate. Look at what language we're speaking now. It's their language.
I know.
And they used to say that the sun never sets on the British Empire because they were all over the globe. And what happened then? They had the Opium Wars because the British. You know what their number one product was for importing for selling to make money?
Silk? Opium. Was it China too?
They were selling that in China.
Oh, they were selling it to China?
They were selling it to China, getting them hooked on drugs. And when the Chinese government or emperor or whatever, he's like, we can't have our people all hooked because they were all high.
Now China is selling fentanyl to the U.S.
No. This is projection.
So I think
a lot of the United
is Chinese, isn't it? Some in the United States have been claiming that this is a revenge thing from China. Now they're doing their version of
we'll get to that.
Anyway, I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, I know. I've heard that too. But so the British wanted to sell their opium to the Chinese, and the Chinese banned it. They burned it, and they said they were going to execute people who sell it.
Big epidemic of addicts, right?
Right. And the British said, oh no, we're going to force you to take our opium. And they went to war and beat China, and they got China hooked on opium for all those years. And then they took over. So they had Hong Kong. So like 150 plus years later, they returned it to China.
Yeah.
And they say like, oh, one country, two systems, like Hong Kong can still run independently, like under freedom way, as if they were free under the British, who treated them like dirt, but
Western style. So
yeah,
to be more exact.
So
everything white is.
So that's the Hong Kong issue, and then Hong Kongers a few years ago were protesting for independence too, like Hong Kong freedom and this. They were waving, the President Trump, please save us, or Nancy Pelosi, save us. And what you saw there was like these activists, like what's his name, Joshua Wong, would meet with like U.S. government officials, who are helping guide them and telling, instructing them to protest. And the protesters then, it was in the news and it was criticized as being like, look how brutal the Hong Kong police are on these protesters. And yet these protesters were killing people. There's one where they threw a brick at a man, an old man who was just like a worker, who was just like cleaning the road or whatever, threw a brick at his head, killed him. Another guy was set on fire. Like they just lit him up on fire.
They put one of the protesters?
No, these are like people who were against the protesters saying, why are you causing trouble? Okay. Why you, like, just like we hate the protesters here, we say like they're just destroying businesses, they're disrupting business,
I support the protesters here.
Yeah, so we always support the protesters when they're abroad, but when they're here, we hate it. So the same thing was going on there. They're going into restaurants and things, breaking everything. And people who didn't like the protesters would attack them and actually beat them. And there are plenty of videos that you could see on Twitter.
So these are news that weren't covered by the mainstream media.
It wasn't. Right? And there's even one video showing a cop get stabbed in the throat by one of the protesters. Now, this never made it in there. If American protesters started stabbing police officers and killing old people and setting people on fire, how would American police have responded? So I would say that the Hong Kong police were very restrained because they didn't kill anybody. And again, the U.S. was supporting that movement. Now, if Hong Kong naturally has like some kind of independence movement, fine. But why is our government trying to start crap there? We shouldn't be doing that. So that's Hong Kong. You got Taiwan, Hong Kong, then you can go to, say, Tibet. I've heard that since the 90s. I saw that movie 7 Years in Tibet with Brad Pitt. Lama? Yeah. So they say Tibet should be free. The Dalai Lama is a persecuted religious leader and all this. And
is he
I don't think he's a good religious leader, in my opinion. I think he kisses boys. You're right, with the tongue and all that. Well, I think there's something wrong with him.
Meanwhile, he was a CIA asset. He was getting paid by the CIA. He had I
heard about that.
And
that's weird, right?
Tibet, before, during the rule of the Dalai Lama, people were slaves there. They would get their limbs cut off. And you had to be a slave, essentially, for the elite ruling class of Tibetan society. So a thing about Tibet being free is also funny because, again, they can be free, but why are we the ones trying to push for that to happen? That should be up to the Tibetan people. We don't have to be supporting that.
What do you think America's interests are when they're supporting something like that?
I'll get into that but it's about dominance. So, in Tibet, interestingly about Tibet has been a part of China since like the 13th century, like 800 years, right? The first Dalai Lama was selected by a Chinese prince. He who was a descendant of like Kublai Khan, who was like an emperor of the Yuan dynasty.
The Dalai Lama, right? Aren't they supposed to be like the reincarnation?
Yeah, I know, but yet the first selected Dalai Lama was selected by a Chinese prince. Isn't that interesting? I think from the Ming dynasty or whatever. And then the next Dalai Lama was like a grandson of that prince, of the Chinese prince.
Which is supposed to be the reincarnation.
So is this, so we don't know this, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Tibet has been a part of China for like 800 years. Meanwhile, the United States is 247 years old. I mean, if you look at it from that context, does it really make sense for us to be saying, "Hey, you guys over there, you should be free. You should." That's not up to us.
So it's kind of like the America is like the new generation, and they're calling everyone condes.
Something like that.
It's
No,
like,
it's something.
you have to change. You have to
yeah.
change.
Exactly. I think that's how it is. You know, this is,
And before we go to break, let me just bring up one more thing. You know, I went through Taiwan, Hong Kong, Tibet. Now I want to go to Xinjiang. So I'm going.
What's
if you
Xinjiang?
look on a map, it's a region in Western China. It's where the Muslim population, the Uyghur Muslim
you're going
population
from east
lives.
to west, right?
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
The purported
think of it
narrative
as a smile.
Narrative.
It's a smile.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Can you do a frown
So,
too?
well, if they take over Russia and Mongolia, yeah, you could, but so with Xinjiang, you started hearing, I think, a few years ago, China's committing genocide. They're murdering the Muslim population.
Uyghur. Mainstream media started talking about it a lot out of the blue. Yeah,
they're saying all this stuff about China. They're saying genocide is going on, concentration camps, everything, and all that. And is this because they care about Muslims? Do you think America, the number one killer of Muslims over the last 20 years, suddenly cares about Muslims in China? They hate Chinese people, they hate Muslims, but suddenly they care about Chinese Muslims? Doesn't make sense.
And a lot feel bad.
Yeah, maybe they feel bad. So China's response is, hey, come check it out. But they won't go. So all these countries that condemn China and their treatment of the Muslim population there, United States, Canada, Great Britain, Germany, the same countries that go and bomb Muslim countries. Meanwhile, the actual Muslim countries, they all support China. So how is it that the actual Muslim countries support China, whereas American and Western countries are saying, oh, they're harming Muslims? Mm-hmm. Because, again, I think the guy touched upon this a little bit last week, but in Xinjiang, there were terrorist attacks. So many terrorist attacks. People going around just stabbing on a spree. Eventually, the government said, okay, what can we do to de-radicalize these people? Okay, we got to give them opportunities, jobs, because they're acting this way because they have nothing else going on.
These are radical Muslims, right?
Yeah, you'd have to be pretty radical to start stabbing random people, I think. And
they do get punished for the people who actually do the actual stabbing.
Right.
They do get punished.
So they did create camps or schools or education center, whatever you want to call it, to, I guess in their minds, they think that's poisonous knowledge or poisonous way of thinking, to remove that and replace it with more pure, cleaner thinking, more conducive to social harmony.
Like a lot of what North Korea, is they say that North Korea does too. Like
perhaps, but then they say, and then the population has been growing, and I wonder if we had hundreds of terrorist attacks across the United States, and it was being committed by, like, say, Native Americans. I have a feeling we would be much tougher on Native Americans than the Chinese have been on the Uyghur population. I suspect.
Now it will be a little bit different climate, right? Probably decades ago, it would be that way, I think. But these days, they have indigenous days here and there, they at least pretend to care, right?
Yeah, who knows? But, but I'm just saying, like, we don't know what our response would be, like, but that was their response. We can criticize it and condemn it, but hey, we got attacked on 9/11, and then look how many millions of lives were affected in the Middle East because of that. China had hundreds of terrorists, maybe thousands, I think hundreds of terrorist attacks. And instead of just bombing the whole region of Xinjiang, they said, all right, let's try to fix them. And there hasn't been, as far as I know, an attack in quite a while. So it's relatively peaceful there. You can see videos of the capital of Xinjiang, Urumqi. Mm-hmm. You can see how people live there. And it's not as... I guess in like Saudi Arabia or other countries where it might be more conservative and strict, the people in Xinjiang seem to be more free, dance and music and enjoying themselves. So the reason for all this, I guess we can go to break and I'll get into it.
We can go all the way to 40 minutes.
We can just put the break at the end.
Yeah. So if you look on a map, you can see Taiwan, Hong Kong. It's basically an encirclement. And then the U.S. has bases in Philippines, South Korea. It's a complete encirclement. Japan. Same thing with Ukraine. What is Ukraine? It's right on Russia's border.
Yep.
Right. So the biggest challengers to U.S. hegemony or global dominance is Russia and China. I mean, ultimately China, but Russia is kind of in the way still. I think. And Russia and China are tight. They're neighbors. Of course, they're going to be tight. And
And they're getting tighter and tighter. They're getting tighter and tighter with more economic trade deal going on between those two countries. It seems like they want to go against the United States, so China and Russia. I think their coalition has gotten stronger ever since the war with Ukraine.
I mean, sure, yeah, and I think, So the whole idea behind this is the goal of all this is destabilization of China. You want China to be. You don't want them to be united. You want to have instability. You want to possibly, ideally, have them go independent, but then militarily occupy them. So if Taiwan declares independence, obviously the U.S. is going to be like, okay, we'll station ourselves here to protect you. If they do the same in Hong Kong, they have direct access to China. You have Tibet, so you're covering China from all sides except from the north, and in a future potential military conflict, that puts you in a very good position.
You're saying that it's America, United States government's strategy, long-term strategy to have China implode, right? That's probably one of the plans.
Communist country, right? Communism implode. Is that?
Create a lot of divisions so that they have their own. They create bigger issues in China.
The ultimate goal is to dominate the whole world.
United States.
Beneath that is to at least make China subservient to U.S. interests. But I again, China is so big. America has 335 million people or so. China's population is 4 times bigger than that. We're talking 1.4 billion people. And not only...
is that it? 1.4?
1.4. Well, they represent almost a fifth of humanity.
How much is India?
India's
catching up.
It's about the same. I think India may have recently surpassed them, actually.
30% of the population are Indian and Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think... I don't think we can stop China's rise. Even Napoleon, back in the day, he said, when China awakens, it'll be like a beast, like a dragon or something. It's like a sleeping dragon, something like that. So I think no matter how hard the U.S. tries or Western powers try, we are not going to be able to contain China, and China will eventually. It will be number one.
I do really agree that the U.S. does have bases all around, and the U.S. has been policing, or in a way trying to police the world.
They are actually kind of the world police in a way,
and very very successful.
Whether we like
at
it or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
But one of the things that kind of help makes me not kind of shake my head or kind of wonder about China is that I've been to China too. And there's some things about China, like information, censorship, things like that, suppression, things that you Google over there, or if you go to you have to use a VPN to use Facebook. But everyone uses a VPN over there, and no one really gets punished for it at the same time. So when you're doing that, and also when you're moving from one province to another province, I noticed that there's other permits that you have to carry, and apparently there are people there that are living there who are telling me that normal people can't go from one province to the next without this pass or something, and you have to get this permission. And when you're looking at it from a very free American perspective, you're like, hey, what the hell? Even from a Korean perspective, you can move from province to province, from state to state without any kind of restrictions, right? So we'll talk about that right after this break. That's some of the things that I think I'm curious about.
All right.
와, 이게 미국 공원이구나. 아, 진짜 좋다. 나 이따가 사진 좀 잘 찍어봐.
걱정하지 마. 내가 키 2m로 나오게 찍어줄게.
자, 여러분, 금강산도 식후경입니다. 먹고 시작하자.
아니 근데 기분 진짜 좋아. 미국에 오니까 또 한강에서 치맥하는 거랑 기분이 또 다르네.
내가 잘 골랐지? 여기가 미남 미녀들이 제일 많이 모이는 데래.
그럼 언니가 여기 있으면 안 되는 거 아니야?
어머? 아우 야, 나 또 킹받네 진짜. 아니 언니 그런 말도 쓸 줄 알아?
야!
이제 그만하고 빨리 한잔하자. 건조해서 그런지 목이 마르다.
마셔.
아니 근데 우리 여기서 술 마시면은 총 맞는 거 아니야?
너 왜 그런 소리를 해? 무섭게.
아니 저기 봐, 경찰이 자꾸 쳐다봐.
어머? 아 진짜 또 이쁜 건 알아가지고 또 진짜.
언니, 내가 그 말은 도저히 맨정신에 들어줄 수가 없다. 나 빨리 한잔해.
아니 근데 진짜 저기 보라니까. 손에 총 차고 있어.
진짜 너 진짜 나한테 관심 있나 봐.
Excuse me, ladies. What's going on here?
Yes, I'm fine.
Thank you. And you?
You can't drink those here.
뭐라고요? 같이 마시자고요?
여기서 마시면 안 된다는 것 같은데.
Drinking in public? Are you guys trying to go to jail?
제일? 여기서 마시는 게 제일 좋다는 건가?
아니 아줌마. 콩밥. 이 바깥에서 술 마시면 against law야. 유리도 깨지면 발 아야 해. 아프잖아. dangerous야. 병원 가. 조심해. First time, it's okay. 괜찮아. We're gonna let you off with a warning this time. 술병 안 보이게 빨리 좀 치워서 가 그냥. Okay? You got it?
언니, 내가 국제 로맨스 타령하다가 총 맞는다고 했지?
총 안 맞았거든. 나 근데 닭다리 하나만 제발 뜯으면 안 될까? 나한테 말 걸지 마. 알았어, 먹을게.
Okay, so go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, I forgot what we're supposed to talk about.
You have to go to the bathroom. You gotta go. You gotta go. You
I
know what
washed
you're
my
gonna do.
hands thoroughly, so
That's fine. And it's okay. I'm okay with you. Don't worry.
그거는 에디팅 해야 돼. So,
Even
okay.
if you wash, you
So
don't
anyway,
wash
you were talking about.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we go.
No,
live
we were
right
talking
now.
about this. Okay, I was talking about when I was in China.
I
You
know
see
you're talking
certain
about
things
the freedom,
this,
individual
something
freedom
like
in
that.
China.
When you Google like Tiananmen Square from China,
No,
the
but
results are
I
different.
think-
There's certain information suppression going on. I think that's what kind of
No,
makes me wonder about China.
I think Michael wants to point out the fact that actually it goes along with what we've been talking about a lot. The mainstream media, how corrupt they are. They point out
But you're
things that
I don't trust anything in the
that
States
they
either.
want people to point out, but they don't want to cover the news like Twitter files and all those things. And I think what Michael is trying to say is, no, don't just look at the Twitter files or other issues that the mainstream media are not covering, but what they are heavily covering about, like COVID-19 or Uyghur, anything related to China. I don't think there's a lot of positive news coming out of that. Like TikTok, I think we talked about it. Like the reason why the United States government is trying to suppress TikTok
Ads.
is because
Ad
the rise of it. Yeah, ad revenues, because Google, YouTube, and Facebook they have been losing a lot of their fan base
I
to
agree.
TikTok because
So
many people have been telling
Zuckerberg
them.
actually had some kind of a hearing or something where he was leading
Yeah.
the talk about how TikTok was detrimental to society, and also they were taking spy information out and personal information and this
Yeah.
and that.
And
right?
even a lot of media experts have been saying that TikTok is a future of the world media. So that's how powerful they were getting. So that's why I think Mark Zuckerberg and these
with people just
figureheads,
dancing and stuff.
but they talk a lot about politics. I mean, a lot of issues too.
Maybe I
so
should check it out.
So they wanted to suppress this. That's true. That's I
Right.
think that is true. So I think but
yeah.
Michael is like, don't just stop there.
Yeah.
Look at other big issues. Even these things, it could be
Yeah.
not as reported, right? That's what you're trying to point
Sure.
out.
And, what you were talking about TikTok, that goes into like the other point I wanted to make about, is China trying to take over the world? But before I get to that, I know you brought up like the personal freedoms issue and all that.
yeah.
Like, maybe on another show we can talk about that. But today I want to look at China from more like a global perspective.
all right.
So, there's this fear that, perhaps China's trying to take over the world. And, because China's evil and corrupt and uncultured.
No, I think it's because someone mentioned some kind of an ideology that Xi Jinping goes by, which actually is like geared at kind of expansion or land or territorial expansion.
To my knowledge, that is not correct at all. There's a One Belt initiative where he's trying to connect all these different countries together for trade. I think things that, were manufactured in China that would have taken like months to reach Africa, now it can be like, once that whole project is complete, it can be done within a week. And I think, we have this view that they want to take over the world. They make predatory loans to African nations, that they, and about Taiwan and all that stuff, right? And
Or also certain territorial disputes.
The
that
loan
occur in
interest
that
rate
area
is
too.
much lower than United States or right?
right.
Interest rates?
Yeah.
If the World Bank could offer something better, then why would they go to China, right? And China has been, I heard from some Liberian, Liberia being a country in Africa, Liberian, I think it was a minister of public works. He said that the Chinese renegotiated loans like 87 times or something, whereas like you wouldn't get that with the US or whatever. They would just be like, all right, we're going to take your stuff or whatever it is. And that, from an African perspective, okay, are we going to go with the people who will always renegotiate loans with us or, those who don't? So, but anyway, this whole idea that China's going to take over, no, it's not true, because even from the Chinese perspective, whether you want to believe them or not, they're a multi-thousand-year civilization, right? And I think they know from their own history that trying to build an empire, it always leads to failure. Ultimately, you end up destroying yourself, and they don't intend to export their system. And they even say, our system is not going to work for everyone else. This system works for us. So the difference is, like, here in the US, we believe that, freedom, democracy, as we see it, as we define it, is universal. And we go around the world and we may try to enforce it like we did in Iraq or wherever, often with very disastrous results.
Yes.
So that's the fear that maybe China may end up doing something like that someday. But just to give a little perspective on this, I would say, you look at China over the last 50, 60, 70 years, how much it's grown, how much it's changed. It has grown faster. You look at the British Empire, the American Empire, the growth, the Ottoman Empire, Roman Empire, all these different empires throughout history, how bloody and everything it was, and eventually they all ended. China's rise over the last 50, 70 years has been bigger and faster than all those empires. And it was all done peacefully. Did they go to war? Did they take over anything? Did they fire and drop bombs? They did this all peacefully already. So through this method, they've already become, by some measures, number one. Although, GDP,
now they're
whatever,
barely
number two.
but they're catching up.
This was done without war. So let's say they do reach number one and they do become the world superpower. What, suddenly they're going to go to war? No. If that was their intent, then they wouldn't be building infrastructure all over Africa. And China makes, 5-year, 10-year, 20-year, 50-year plans or whatever. We don't do that here. We just plan for the next election. Oh, I got to win the next election, got to raise money. Same cycle over and over. So I don't think China intends to take over the world. I think China just, and as I've heard from Chinese leaders themselves, whether you want to believe it or not, but at least we can hear, they say, hey, China does not intend to be the world's superpower, nor can it be, and nor should there ever be a world superpower, because it's the 21st century. We've moved past the age of dominance where like one country should rule over all. We've reached the stage where I think we can just sort of treat each other with respect, try to build that kind of world where we're not threatening, like you do this or I'm going to do this. Mutual benefit, exchange, friendship without so much violence as we've seen in the past and currently.
Well, China, and
I'm not a CCP agent. I can see the comments already. He's a spy for Xi Jinping. Yeah.
No, there obviously is. You're right. Okay, but when you see like sort of the East Asian relations as well, there are infringements that China makes on Korea's property, or not property, but territorial area, maritime territories. We're talking about Philippines as well as Vietnam, and we see certain infringements in there, as well as kind of certain repercussions for Korea, for example, leaning this way or leaning that way, and these kind of things I think is kind of shaking the faith. But I do understand that happens everywhere else as well.
Right. I want to get on that. So, China still has border disputes and has had border disputes with many countries. I think like 15 or something like that since the founding of the PRC. But, what I think as of a few years ago, what I read was that every single one of those border disputes, except for like 3 of them, they've all been resolved peacefully. It takes time, but they do it peacefully. And I know there's still some with India, and there's some clashes between soldiers there sometimes. But so far, their track record is pretty peaceful. I think eventually, I would hope that, whatever disputes with Korea Because I know even North Korea, something about, Baekdusan and...
Yeah.
Or they call it...
apparently
Did
sold
North
half the
Korea
land or
lose
something.
some territory?
Yeah,
Baekdusan territory to China?
Like half
because that
of
has
Baekdusan
been
belongs to China.
on the news, yeah.
That's been on the news
Is that
too.
true or not?
Yeah, actually, I don't know about that.
Okay.
But,
all right.
yeah.
Real quick, just to follow up to that, how about China's claims to culture and heritage, for example, like kimchi, things like that? I don't know if
This is another thing I want to... This is another thing I really like... I hate it when the news tries to get Korean people to hate China. So when they had the Winter Olympics...
This is Korean news. Yeah,
Korean news.
But who's directing Korean news? I don't...
CNN?
I would imagine that there's some Operation Mockingbird activities going on there too.
We're going deep.
But... Or maybe not, but it's a possibility. But remember the Winter Olympics...
Pyeongchang?
Was it? No. The Beijing.
Sochi? Beijing? Was there one in Beijing?
What was that thing in Beijing? Was it that?
Beijing Olympic is
was it Winter Olympics?
The Beijing Olympic was Summer Olympics.
You could have the winter
Right,
Olympics.
that was 2008. No, they did something recently.
Sochi?
Chloe, what's her name? That American
Chloe Kim.
No.
Torrance.
Was there an Olympic in
Can you search about it?
Was Beijing winter?
Beijing is 2008. No.
No, they had something. I remember. And I think it has something to do with pandemic or something, right?
조금 오버해서 나가도 되니까 찾아볼게. Yeah.
I don't know.
We're gonna have
Then
to.
can I go pee real quick?
You have to go now.
Are you serious?
I'm really bad. I'm like sitting there like dying.
We
right
only
now.
have
did you
8
go?
minutes.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. Okay. So there was this thing during the Olympics where the Chinese athletes or whatever, they had all these. They had a Korean wearing hanbok, right? And then the Korean people got pissed. Like, look at China. They're trying to claim hanbok as theirs. But the reality is, China had all their ethnic minorities come out marching. It was more than like 40 minorities.
It was last year.
Yeah.
Beijing Tokyo Olympic. Are you talking about?
Oh, you
that
could
one?
have the Winter Olympics in Beijing?
Yeah, it was the
Yeah, it
Beijing
was
Winter
Beijing.
Olympics, right?
It snows in Beijing.
Yeah.
Does it snow in
Yeah,
Beijing?
it was 2022. Yeah,
Or is it fake
Beijing
snow?
Tokyo Olympic. Yeah,
Wow.
go ahead, but
So
We're all
yeah,
stupid.
There was the Eileen Gu. Anyway, she was a U.S. Who.
Oh yeah.
right.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
So anyway,
God.
Let's
there-
follow some sports news, man.
there were
Okay.
ethnic Chinese. Ethnic Koreans wearing the hanbok, and then people got pissed saying, "Hey, look at China trying to claim our."
Yeah, I remember that.
thing." You
You're
remember that,
Yep,
right?
Yep.
But the reality is, China had all their minorities all wear their traditional clothing. So what was China supposed to do? Say like, hey, Koreans might get mad, so you wear the something else.
No, put a Korean flag on there to
So
represent.
you think kimchi actually could have started there too?
Well, again, who claimed that kimchi is Chinese? Like, who? I want to
Apparently
see
China,
the post.
apparently.
The Chinese government or a random Chinese person on Weibo or something, like on Chinese Twitter. Who is saying this? Is this in official books, or is it like the equivalent of a Trumper here saying that Trump is God? Like, and then are we going to
is
say
God.
America claims Trump is God? That's the other thing we do is we take the words of a few weird people on Chinese social media and then try to apply that and say the whole country thinks this way. Every country's going to have crazy people or whatever, things like that. But we can't just take a few ridiculous tweets here and then apply that to all of America, can we? So if China did claim that kimchi is theirs, then let's okay, what is it exactly? Where's the source? What book? What publication? Who wrote that? Is it official? That's what we have to know. We can't just say China claimed this. Screw China. Yeah.
But China, Michael, you know that there are conflicting reports of what you just said. I'm not just what you just said immediately about kimchi, but also like China not wanting to be the dominating force. Some media, mainstream media, have been claiming that China's ultimate goal, according to their policy, is world domination.
Yeah,
so
that's
I
that
think
thing,
and also about the Hong Kong protest, the reports, many media reports here have been saying that the police have been too violent against the protesters. And there has been a lot of injuries, probably even death. I don't know. I didn't. You know what I'm saying? There has been some conflicting.
If there was a death, the media would have mentioned that person's name.
Yeah.
They would have jumped on that name and blown it up and turned that person into like a global martyr. Meanwhile, there are protests in France and the French police are beating the crap out of French people.
Right, yeah.
Has it made any headlines here? It's been going on for quite a while. It's been going on for years. There's been protests, wild protests been going on there for years.
Even pre-pandemic, there has been a lot of protesting. The yellow jersey, and because COVID kind of, after the lockdown, it was kind of suppressed. But in France, that's a huge issue. The yellow jersey and then the red jersey movement there. But anyway, yeah, you're right. I mean,
the yellow vest, right?
The yellow vest, yeah.
Right, I remember that, yeah. So, yeah. And what was it you said before the people being brutal on the protesters? There was some other thing you brought up right before.
Oh, about the kimchi issue, you know.
The
you were
kimchi.
saying that, you know.
Oh wait, you said the mainstream media said that according to China's policy, they do want world domination.
Yeah.
If that's true, then show me that official policy. Where is it on their website? I want to see that because I've never seen that or heard that. I know the mainstream media says that.
So the mainstream media is just basically printing fake news. I mean, straight up making this up out of thin air.
Well, did they show the evidence? Where is it in the document or the Constitution of China or whatever that says that? I want to see that.
Yeah, you're right.
I
never really checked on that.
I think sometimes they show like a representative saying similar to that, but we don't know.
But
we don't
a representative
understand
could be
Chinese,
like
but-
Trump.
So what you're saying is, I think largely the mainstream media is fake news. I do.
Right.
I really do. You know, I think they purposely report
But fake by
wrongful
omission
things.
or fake by fake?
Both,
Like fake,
both,
making
both. Like
stuff
for
up.
instance, when COVID-19 hit in New York, you know, they showed a New York Metropolitan Hospital, and they said it was filled with patients, COVID patients. But actually, the real footage, it was CBS reported this.
Yeah.
The real footage was from Italy. So
Yeah.
they do all these kind of fake stuff, and then even the WikiLeaks revelation that it's true. John Podesta's email, he mentioned there's a lot of fishy talks, but they pretended that the whole thing is conspiracy theory. I think that those are all fake.
Yeah,
you know?
the media, our leaders, they not only lie to us about what's going on here, they lie to us about what's going on outside of here. And, you know, one of the good things for them is we have so many problems here, problems that we are not fixing, that we're ignoring. So instead of talking about that, it's better to distract the population and always point at an enemy outside.
Yeah, I mean,
look at this country,
if
look
you
at
have
that
a common
country.
enemy,
It's
it's easier to
instigating.
unite the people,
Hey,
right?
you said that about you.
And you get them
Okay.
to ignore their own misery and suffering.
So among all American politicians, who are the ones who are not interventionists? You know, like who are not, we love imperial power America? Who are the anti-establishment candidates? On the Democrat side, do you see some?
I don't think you can be a Democrat or Republican and claim to be against the establishment.
How about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? He talks a lot about this issue.
You know,
he doesn't want America to be involved.
I've lived
in all
long
these
enough to
countries.
hear people talk a good game, but eventually
No, because I think we want
he'll
to.
be another AOC or whatever.
You feel that way about
I
it?
don't have faith in him, no.
So they just say whatever to get in the game. Once they're in the game, they turn into the establishment.
And I think he might feel the pressure. He doesn't want to end up like his...
So isn't it
you know,
a responsibility for us to pick somebody who is the lesser evil, at least?
Well, if you had to pick between Mussolini and Hitler, I guess, you know, I don't know. Who would
I
you
don't
pick?
think they're Mussolini or Hitler, though,
But
the current
if-
government,
I mean,
the United States
the
government.
lesser of two evils. Why would I want to choose for
No,
evil?
just want since we're at it, it's
No.
U.S. policy towards China or the world that that we're pointing that.
Well, the
is very
policy doesn't
wrong.
change, right? The policy stays the same. So does it even matter?
No.
I mean, it's as if I don't know. It's this myth.
There are
that
some anti-war presidents. I think Trump is pretty anti-war. I really think so.
Well, but he bombed Syria and then he assassinated an
didn't wa-
Iranian general
yeah.
who was fighting against ISIS. So I don't know. I mean, he wasn't as bad, but he didn't start like a full-scale thing. But he did.
But
drop
that was
some
a
bombs
revenge
too.
thing because he killed Americans. That was his his response as a United States
if
president.
that's the
but,
case, then
but it's not like a
does-
full-fledged war. Like what I'm
Right,
saying, like
right.
Iraq war or Afghan. But
Oh man, the time is short, huh?
I think
I know, it's a
we're going to
very
edit it
interesting
out.
conversation.
Some parts.
No, we cannot edit
saying that
this.
No,
word.
because you said you were going to go.
No, we're not editing
All right,
nothing.
okay. So
We'll
okay,
edit your
I
key
won't
part.
say it. I won't say it.
All right, thank you for tuning into Culture Shock.
Are you gonna end that show?
Thank you for tuning into Culture Shock. Leave all your hateful comments. It's okay. I'll respond to them next time.
It's always an interesting conversation with Michael.
Yeah,
I think so.
he wanted to show the other side of China, and I think most people don't get that information from mainstream media or even conservative.
You're right. When you see like the state of media and news report broadcasts in America, it's not very hard to believe that that other reports or like alternative reports may surface, regarding one country or another. All right. Well, that's going to be it for today's Culture Shock. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.